All right, we are recording.
Okay, it is 2:00 on May 7th, 2025. This is a meeting of the Land Use Review Board, and I am Janet Hurley, the chair. And now that Alex has popped on, all 5 of us are present. So let's start with Sarah.
Sarah Had, present.
Brooke.
Brooke Dingledine, present.
Kirsten.
Kirsten Sultan, present.
Alex.
Alex Weinhagen, present.
Thank you. I believe we do have one agenda update. Brooke, did you make a note of that? For
Yes.
G? Okay.
Yes, if I could make a motion, I move to amend item G on today's agenda to specifically identify enforcement case 2024_040 and docket number 23-ENV-00043.
Okay,
So that we can discuss those with our attorneys, as well as the item that was already noticed for executive session.
Okay, thank you. Do we need a second for that motion to change the agenda?
I'll
Sarah,
second
I
that.
see your hand up. Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of changing the agenda to identify those 2 cases, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
So we will identify them in the motion that we make to go into executive session under item G. Okay, do we have any public comment on non-agenda items at this point? Seeing none, we can move on to studies and reports. Let's start with Sarah. Do you have any reports on work that you are up to?
I'm working on refining the Tier 1A into guidance. I think just as a quick follow-up to on Thursday's conversation, there was a question about if a community could apply for Tier 1A prior to regional plan approval, and we got the official read on that the answer is no. So continuing to work on sort of sorting out some of the other details, and hopefully we'll have something within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Brooke.
I'm happy to report on the appeals studies first stakeholder meeting, which we convened Monday at Dewey Building at the National Life Complex. I forgot to count up how many participants that we had from the attendance records, but it was a very robust turnout. We began our work going over the legislative charge. We did a PowerPoint presentation just to make sure that we were all aware of the universe of the kinds of cases that we were talking about consolidating or coordinating, either at the court and where we would offer some guidance if there were ideas on speeding up the process, making it work better for folks, or looking at board models for the same purpose to determine if there were a better organization for appeals of A&R municipal permits as well as Act 250 permits and enforcement actions. So we had a wonderful discussion. I've had some feedback, and folks were glad that they were able to participate. I think the discussion went well. We tried to ensure that everyone had an opportunity who wanted to speak to the different issues. It was mostly an introduction and determination of trying to move forward, how we would do so, how to identify the goals of the study, as well as to identify the issues that we wanted to, that we liked and want to preserve, as well as those challenges that we wanted to try to find solutions for. So I was really very pleased with the participation. We had a few issues in terms of people coming and going out of the building, and the technical issues we're trying to iron those out to make sure that that we're able to clearly identify the folks online that want to speak, want to make sure that when they raise their hand, we have sets of eyes, making sure that the conversation in the room is not dominating, and wanted to ensure that the people online were able to fully participate as well. I think it went fairly well, but I think there's a little room for improvement. And so we've met to try to make sure that we iron out any of those challenges. And there was time for public comment. We didn't have any members of the public who were not already designated as citizen stakeholders to offer anything at that particular meeting. But we continue to welcome that kind of input. And the other thing that we're working on is to make sure that these stakeholder meetings are more prominent on our website, so that it doesn't take a couple clicks to find the agenda and the invite to be able to participate. The one issue that we do have in holding the meetings at the National Life Complex is that we must have attendees' names ahead of time. So we are confined unless we get correspondence or are contacted by someone in the public who wants to come in person, who's not able to attend online. We can make arrangements for that. But I will point out that the physical space that we have, we have a full house, and so we would have to know about that ahead of time and make arrangements and make sure that we have the space for it. We can certainly do our best to accommodate anyone who does want to come in person, and I don't think it will be a problem. But we do need to know that ahead of time. So if we could really focus on getting that website prominently, our events prominently displayed, because we are charged with allowing for public comment at each of our stakeholder meetings for the appeals study, which is specific to that study as opposed to some stakeholder groups that might be more closed. So, and I appreciate the notes that Janet took during the meeting. I'm in the process and will be sending out tomorrow, or Alexandra will be sending out tomorrow, the agenda for Monday's meeting. And Alex Weinhagen is the other facilitator for that meeting. I chatted with him briefly, and we are going to be prepared to have continuing conversation about the appeals, as well as the municipal, trying to speed up the the housing appeals, which we were able to determine are about a third of the environmental division's docket in the zoning context, as well as in Act 250. So that information I think is really important to also share right now with the legislature, because they are, I sent you folks some information on S147. No, what number was it?
27?
127, right. And that's going to House Ways and Means. And I think that Representative Mahaly would appreciate knowing the information that we have already on the breakdown of the judicial statistics. So that, because I think that would be informative of the bill that they're working on right now.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. I think it went really well. There was robust conversation the entire time. So, and we went over a little bit, didn't we, in time?
Yes, luckily we had the meeting room till 4:30, so.
Yeah.
So, no, I was very pleased, and I'm reaching out to some of the stakeholders just to get some feedback, including people that didn't necessarily speak up at the first meeting, to make sure that they have all the information and feel comfortable engaging. If there's anything that we can do to help facilitate that. Because certainly our legal brain trust of Act 250 in Vermont was very active during the conversation. But it was really because this matter has been studied for decades, and we really benefit from hearing from them to understand. There are many issues involved in the conversation, and we are very fortunate to have these folks be able to convey all of their experience. The other thing I will say is the collaborative nature of it was wonderful. It was not this, debate of people being in their own camps about court versus a board model. So that was really refreshing because we're looking for solutions and improvements. And I think that everyone wants to ensure that. So I was very appreciative of people's opinions and positions. They were so cooperative. It was great.
Alex?
Look, you and I chatted briefly before the meeting. Thanks for that update in advance of this meeting. I forgot to ask, though, there had been some discussion about possibly relocating future meetings to a different location. Is that still up in the air, or we're going to stick with the Dewey Building?
So for Monday's meeting, we're sticking with the Dewey Building primarily because folks were not didn't feel that we were ready to split up into smaller groups to dig down into more of the details of different topics. They felt that they wanted to continue moving through with the whole group, mapping out how we were going to proceed. So we feel like Monday will be fine in the Dewey Building if we get a similar physical response as well as online. And then we would decide if we were ready then. We do have, Rachel is looking into other options for us, including VTC. I think the Barry Old Labor Hall was another option. But I think that if folks were very comfortable in the setting, and so we're going to stick with that for the one meeting and decide for the third meeting where that one will occur if a change in venue is desired by the group.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to help do a little bit of PR within my own channels about these meetings since they are open to the public. That's why I was asking the question, also so I know where to show up on Monday. But mostly it's about the PR piece of it, and it's just a little hard to help with PR when we don't know the details about the remote meeting connection or the location, until the day before the meeting. So like you said, as soon as the website can be updated with the actual info for each of these meetings, the better.
I will say this. I believe that Rachel is going to be able to find a large meeting room or different meeting rooms at VTC in Randolph Center. And if she has been able to secure that before the end of this week, perhaps we will go ahead and make that reservation so that we can tell folks, since we are limited right now to having physical members of the public come because of the security protocols and all of that. Plus, we know that we will want to break into discussion groups. So I think it may make sense to go ahead and reserve the larger room if it is available, or the multiple rooms, anticipating that will be the next step in the process. And that way, it would certainly allow members of the public, whomever might want to come in person, to attend.
I think that's a good idea, particularly because of that reason. So regardless of whether we're ready to break up into groups, I think it would be better to be in a location that is more accessible to the public.
Okay, I'll follow up with Rachel and we will see what is available and make sure we can advise people as soon as possible about the change.
Thank you, Brooke. Kirsten, you're next on my screen.
Sure. So we spent a while last week talking about wood products manufacturers, so I'm thinking I'll keep this a little abbreviated. Last week, Brooke and I met with ANR to begin focusing on some preliminary ideas in follow-up to the first stakeholder group meeting. And there's a follow-up meeting scheduled with ANR for tomorrow. Pete's looped in as well. So we're continuing those more internal conversations around coming up with some refinement of ideas to bring back to the bigger stakeholder group next week when our second meeting is scheduled. And we're also holding that at Dewey. The wood products manufacturers stakeholder group is not in of itself one that at this point is sort of open to the general public in the way that the appeals study one is. There will be an opportunity for public comment later in June on the draft report. We do have a stakeholder group member who is present and has participated with respect to kind of general citizen neighbor interest, and that's Annette. Annette, I see, is with us here now. The other thing that has occurred in the last week is I met with FPR. There had been a concern about direct participation from actual wood products manufacturers beyond the different people, entities, otherwise already on the steering group, stakeholder group. And so we went down through the list of permittees and applicants going back a little more than 10 years, going back to 2014. We split the list in two, and we've extended a second opportunity for direct engagement through meetings, online meetings. And so mine was held yesterday, and we did have one participant, and it was a pretty robust conversation. Brooke was in attendance as well, so took notes. ANR has not yet held their meeting, but we will be compiling that information hopefully early next week to supplement the sort of the feedback information from the sector. So yeah, and I've started to draft a report, and I'll be working on getting out an agenda by the end of the week, no later than Monday, like a few days in advance of the second stakeholder group meeting. So, and Maddie and I are connecting. I also think there's some opportunities to enhance kind of how, some elements of how the meeting ran. So yeah, it's all just
Okay.
continues to be underway.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you made some additional outreach that is going to be helpful. So, Alex, you're next on my screen.
Right. So the update on the tier 3 rulemaking process is that we met with staff actually today, this morning at the all staff meeting to get the initial round of conversation flowing from them about tier 3. This is before we start drafting any rules, just thinking about the types of critical natural resource areas that should be considered and jurisdictional trigger thoughts. So that was a good meeting, and I encourage staff to communicate with me directly, afterwards if they have thoughts and want to bring them forward. And I assured them that we would be back in touch with them in June, July, when we have a first rough draft, so that just like the working group and the public, the staff will have an opportunity to provide feedback on, what we've put together as a straw man. Additionally, the second working group meeting of stakeholders is tomorrow. Janet will be helping facilitate that with me at the National Life Building. And So looking forward to that. Also, our first public meeting, public engagement session for this tier 3 work, again, at the front end of the process, is scheduled for May 22nd. So I've been working with Maddie on a press release and just doing PR for that, which I think might be our first, truly public engagement sort of session for any of our Act 181 work. This is not a group of stakeholders. This is not staff. This is designed for Vermonters who aren't in those other rooms and want to have a chance to understand what's going on and provide some early feedback.
Alex, will you remind us where that meeting is being held?
Yes, so that meeting is May 22nd. It's in Essex at the Act 250 hearing office in Essex Junction. It's a hybrid meeting, of course, so I imagine maybe more participants would be participating remotely. And it's from 6 to 8 p.m. So it's in the evening, hopefully giving folks who have the regular workday obligations an opportunity to join.
Thank you. And that leaves me, but it looks like there is discussion on draft regional plan review guidelines on the agenda. I'm not sure we're ready for that yet. Rebecca and I and Sarah have met after I produced a draft, very sort of technical guidelines document. Rebecca has enhanced it with more technical necessities, and we've had a discussion, Sarah in particular, pointing out that we will need maybe an outward-facing guidance document as well, as this very inwardly facing document that really goes through step by step by step how we are going to take these applications in and how we are going to review them and issue a final determination on them. So, so that's in progress. Once the three of us, that is Sarah, Rebecca, and I, have gone through the draft technical guidance, we will share that more broadly with Aaron and Alex Pastor and others to start working up the forms that we anticipate will be needed and shells within our system that will be needed to take in these applications. And I see Charlie Baker was here. Yes, he is here from Chittenden County Regional Commission. We got a little bit of an update as to when the regional plans are expected to start coming to us. They will be coming to us starting most likely in September with NVDA, I think, or no, with Northwest, right?
Rutland.
Oh, Rutland, that's right, Rutland. And then Northwest, then Chittenden, and in October. And, Charlie, actually, Sarah and Rebecca and I were talking and wondering, because of the 60 days from October falling so close to the end of December, whether it might even be better to get both of them in the beginning of October, just because that end of year, there's so many people that are just not around, and maybe it would be better to double up for that, those two submissions. Just something to think about.
Yeah. On our side, I think it's the timing of our board meetings. So yeah,
Okay.
if we can get that to work.
Yeah. Or maybe end of September would be better
Right.
for one of them. Yeah. So, and then, so that's where we are with that. I expect, we'll have a fully fleshed out draft in a few weeks, maybe. So what do you think, Sarah? Is that accurate? An accurate estimate as estimates can go?
There's a lot to get through. I think having a roughed out internal facing draft,
Yeah,
is feasible, yes.
yeah. So, Kirsten,
So in terms of the development of the, what we call, I think you refer to as the shells, which are these templates, right, that are populated with the application specific information. Is there some of that work that the board itself can do or will be
Yeah.
doing, and part of that working with staff to get this into the application system?
yes.
Okay.
Though Aaron, if you're available, I see you on my screen, but if you can answer Kirsten's question as to the technical aspect of what a shell is, I would defer to you on that.
Sure. Was not initiated.
Aaron, we're not
I
hearing
can't hear you very well.
Yeah,
Well, while Aaron's working on that, I understand what a shell is, like the
Right.
template. I'm just like the content of it is kind of more, just kind of like, is there stuff the board can do?
yeah, but
Hear me
I
now?
think it's, even if you understand it, Kirsten, I think it's a good question because others may not. So,
Can you hear me now?
yes, we can.
Okay, sorry about that.
With your beautiful, and we can see you with your beautiful hepatica hat.
For the uninitiated, shells are just what we call the templates that we use internally that are populated with special codes from our online database and application system. It just helps to automate our process for taking in and reviewing applications, and we're hoping to prepare a similar system for reviewing regional plan application reviews and also for Tier 1A application reviews. So my understanding is that Rebecca and Janet and Sarah are going to work on the initial drafts of those templates, and then they'll get them back to staff for review and comment and editing as far as like the practicalities of implementing those templates within our system is concerned. Fair?
Yes, thank you, Aaron. Maddie.
Thank you.
It's Sarah. I just, very
Oh,
quickly,
sorry.
I think just to answer Kirsten's question, that, master schedule sheet in terms of who's being plugged into what, you can go into and you can see, who's being assigned to what in terms of development of shells and responses. And, so I think that there's input on changing some of those things. If there's specific input, great, but I think that's just to sort of speak to, that's what we're trying to follow.
Any more questions on that? The regional plan application process? I think maybe I'll just point out that although there are some sort of ancillary processes that we need to set up, initially, I think we're going to have 11 full regional plan application processes that combine the future land use map, the regional plan, the tier 1B requests, all together without map amendments. So we're just talking about one process. It's a long process that starts with a pre-application, and then there's a final application and a determination that's made probably at least 3 to 4 to 5 months later, depending on how quickly after we do the we submit a pre-application response to an RPC, how quickly they can get that final plan to us. Charlie.
Just a couple thoughts for your consideration as you design your system. And we're starting to think about, some of the layers of this. I don't know if you might, at some point, we may have like separate requests for like tier 1B from the regional plan. So that might be separated. And it's theoretically possible that maybe
You froze.
Charlie, we've lost you. Can you hear us?
yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Not sure what that was. Did you hear why the
Well,
designation?
no, we didn't hear that. You just that,
Okay.
there may be some tier 1Bs that come in separately. And we will be
That's-
setting up those processes too. I'm just anticipating that initially you're going to give us a big everything application.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then the second thing I was saying is that the tier 1B decisions may be distinct, and then there might possibly be distinct decisions on designation areas. Like, and I'm not sure about that. I'm just letting you know, like, we're kind of maybe running into a place where, maybe a town doesn't want, or I don't know, it's hard to imagine, like a center designation, but they're on our map as a center, but they don't want the center designation for some reason. So anyway, we're just trying to think about scenarios.
So
And I just wanted to offer those thoughts.
There is then, well, yeah, so there is the map amendment process. However, that has to involve less than 10
Yeah.
acres. So I don't think
Yeah.
that won't resolve that. I think the
And that's why I
problem
brought
is
it up. It feels like
it may,
there could be a distinct decision that you're asked to make around designation is all my point is.
so the problem is that is a future land use map approval. And if it's not an amendment that fits that 10-acre carve out, you're going to have to go through the whole process for it.
And I'm sorry, I'm not speaking about future changes. I'm saying even within this initial submission, there may be some distinctions that we're bringing to your attention where we don't, for some reason, we don't want just the uniform designations to apply. Like there may be some tweaks there. I don't know. Again, we're
what I
still.
Yeah, I think though that this is tricky because if we confer an approval on a regional future land use map that has a center, shown, that it gets the designation. So I think if
Right.
there's a case where there's a town that doesn't want the designation, you should probably show it as a hamlet.
Yeah, something. We'll have to, and
Yeah.
maybe we can figure it out on our side, but I just.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Or you can come back with a really slim application that all that's changed is this particular town.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And, but it still has to go through that whole process. So,
Yeah, 6 months
Um,
of notices and hearings. Yeah.
well, it might not be 6 months. We can get things maybe out the door a little quicker on those,
But
but
I'm not talking.
you and us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between both of us, it's potentially 6 months.
Yeah.
At a minimum.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, is that you again?
Yes, it is. Thank you. And thank you, Maddie, for being my hand. She's quite literally there. So I was seeking to clarify, but I thought of a question too. And so to speak to Charlie's sort of question is the pre-application process. I'm not sure if he's saying that by the time they get to the pre-application process, there might be some of these unresolved things that they're looking for feedback on, which I would like to think that the pre-application process could provide some of that answers and some of that feedback in terms of the designations. And I think what we're looking for in the pre-application process is, this is no means formal. This is just something to give some informal feedback on, here's our first take at things. Or if there is the need to even have on some of these a pre-application meeting. So I guess that's two questions.
For Charlie?
And for you in terms of, I think as we develop and look at the regional plan review guidelines, is that something that we could even begin to look at and facilitate as the LURB?
Well, I think you're right. I think the pre-application is an opportunity where we can address some of what Charlie's talking about. And we could say, well, if such and such a town, if Westford isn't ready, then you better call it a hamlet, Charlie, right? So, yeah, but it depends on what the issues are, I guess, as to whether we can address them that way. But that's true. The pre-application could be a process in which we can address some of what you are anticipating, Charlie.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not necessarily anticipating, but just some things as we're kind of just, this is going to be a little
Yeah.
messy.
Yeah. And, I think at some point, the legislature will have to have a different carve out that allows changes that are, fairly minor, maybe slightly substantive, but really limited, that involves more than 10 acres or for a map, or, something else that might change in the plan, but nothing else does.
Yeah.
There has to be another process that isn't this potentially 6 months or more process for more limited changes to a regional plan and its map.
Amen.
Okay. Any more questions? How about from the public on regional plan application and review processes? I might report, since Charlie and I and Pete were both at the Rural Caucus meeting this morning, there continues to be concern expressed by particularly rural municipalities in terms of the future land use mapping and implications for private property land use. And I think, as and as Representative Sibilia pointed out, these are consequential, historic approvals of these maps, and we want to get it right, and we want to be sure that we have engaged the people that need to be engaged in developing these first sets of future land use maps. And, I think we've talked about this at previous meetings, but that those 3 rural categories, clarifying that they do not have Act 250 jurisdictional implications, and that there is some latitude in the mapping methodology for the regional planning commissions to, classify within those 3 rural categories according to the situation on the ground there, and not just, did you follow step 1, 2, and 3 in the mapping methodology? But, if there are particular landowners who are really worried about their classification into one of those 3 rural categories, rural general, rural ag and forestry, or rural conservation, just classify them in whichever is most comfortable to that landowner, So, because they do not have Act 250 jurisdictional implications. And, I think that there is still some confusion about the future land use map in Tier 3. And Tier 3 isn't looking at the future land use map at all. It's a separate process that Alex is helping us implement in terms of addressing the critical resource areas that were identified in statute and any others that may come up, and trying to decide whether and how they should be incorporated into a 3rd jurisdictional tier. So, Charlie, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just want to thank you for those comments. Totally agree with everything you just said. And just to let you and the board and the members of the public that are here know that we are spending considerable time trying to reduce the level of confusion that property owners might be feeling, and confusion and anxiety, concern, is all there. And so yeah, we're trying to make clear, what's our role versus your role in tier 3. And after we have the conversation, it usually goes okay, but pre-conversation, there's definitely concerns. And I'll follow that up by asking if anyone on this call or that looks at this later, here's any concerns from a property owner or a community, please send them to the relevant RPC and to have the conversation. We're having these conversations now. One of the things that we reviewed with the Rural Caucus this morning also was, that the staggering timeline. So like Windham County, Windham region is not starting public engagement until September. So yeah, because they're just finishing updating their regional plan outside of these new requirements. So anyway, if you could send them our way, that would be great. And then final thing, Madam Chair, is there the regional plan guidance? We've been trying to pay attention. Will there be a point where there's a draft that we get copies of to kind of do like final review? Please give us any final comments. We'd appreciate that if there was an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We will keep you in the loop. And as I said, there may be a need for inward facing versus outward facing, because our inward facing is going to be very technical and tied to our digital intake architecture, and structure. So, but it will still, we'll still let you see it and let you comment. And as I said, we may be working up alongside that a more outwardly facing document that maybe even has pretty pictures in it for
Yeah,
for
and just to be
applicants.
clear, we are not at all concerned with your internal processes and procedures. It's, I don't think all of the RPCs have really focused in on the guidance that you've been developing so far. And I just want to know when I
Okay.
need to really kind of draw their attention, like, hey, folks, we all need to focus on this one last time and give the LURB any feedback we have for
You
their
might,
consideration. So.
At the next VAPTA meeting, Charlie, you could point them to our website and to the 2 memos that I shared with the board and developed with the board. They're under our Act 181 regional plan review, tabs on the website. So
I've done that. I guess
okay.
maybe I'm asking for a deadline, maybe for us to get
Oh,
any comments
okay.
to you.
Well, yeah. I think we want to try to finish up our guidance by July sometime. So I'll get back to you on a date.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe mid-June or something.
Yeah.
Let us know. Thank you.
Is that Sarah?
Yes,
And
I was
then-
just going to offer, I think, what you were saying about the next couple weeks, we'll hopefully have something started on both internal facing for regional and also tier 1A. And I would have to think it would probably be a couple weeks after that we would probably have. So I think that you're right. I think that's going to be June is probably when we're going to have something that's more outward facing. Hopefully I would hope for earlier June, but we can get back to them. But I think that fits in with your timing.
Early June is right around the corner. So.
But you've got really
We'll
good
see.
drafts, so
Okay.
you're not that far away.
Okay. Any further questions from anybody on regional plan review? Okie doke. Wow, we're ahead of schedule. Let's move on to operations, budget, and legislative update. Do you want to start with operations? And maybe I'll ask Rachel if she has any operations updates for us.
Sorry, do you want me to start or were you asking for Pete to start?
Pete, you start.
Okay. Well, let me talk quickly about a couple of the bills in the legislature on that side of things. The big bill is in conference committee. That's the budget. And the Senate side, as I said before, has the 2 district coordinator positions. We've requested some adjustment in language to make sure that it's clear that those are classified and permanent positions. It also had, the Senate side also had the digital infrastructure in there. We've also asked for clarification on that wording to ensure that it can cover both our Act 181 implementation obligations as well as the current application processes in there. So just that it's a little bit broader. All indications seem that that is moving in the right direction. But we will see, I think at the end of this week or so is when they're anticipated to come out of that conference committee and have something final from that. The open meeting law, there's also been some discussion continuing from the House Government Operations side of things. There was a draft that was discussed yesterday, version 1.1, and that did not include any of the changes that we had requested on my quick review of that earlier. I may be mistaken, but I don't think it's in there yet. It looks like it's on their legislative committee for the rest of the week, so we may see some changes still. We also had testimony last week in Senate Agriculture on H 484. There were questions involving some active investigations. We declined to speak to those active investigations directly, but we did talk about our general enforcement process and how that works in the permitting process as well. That committee is looking at an event style permit that the board may require for AOFBs that would otherwise not qualify for an exemption under the language of Act 181.
Do you have any operations or other program updates?
No, I can leave the Pay Act piece to Rachel, or do you want me to cover that?
If you're prepared to, go ahead. Or if you would like to,
Yeah, sure.
Rachel.
Go ahead, Pete,
Go ahead
if you'd
for it.
like.
Go ahead, Rachel.
We've requested Pay Act as a moment in time. A few weeks ago, we made a request under Pay Act. This is to, during the budgeting process, you need to make assumptions about salaries and benefits for existing state employees. Some of those assumptions may not pan out in real life or may come in differently during the fiscal year than what was assumed. Those assumptions are given to us by finance and management, just so everybody's aware of that point too. We requested $154,136 to make to cover additional salaries and benefits costs than what we budgeted for in the FY25 budget. We were awarded that yesterday, and it's now within our spending authority today. Any questions about that?
Like,
That's
no?
it for me.
Okay. Okay. Moving right along, then, any questions from anybody on that? On updates that we just heard? Kirsten?
Yes, this is kind of for Pete. Do you anticipate that there will be further opportunities to follow the legislation that's been in House government ops that impacts like the open meeting law elements of how the board is undertaking its work? Like, is there, will you and Janet continue to be following that closely and as it moves along, like the other things that we have followed closely?
Yeah, I would ask the same question, Pete. It sounds like, tomorrow and Friday might be maybe some of our final opportunities there.
Yeah.
And I'm busy with Alex tomorrow and driving to I'll be driving up, but I have morning meetings, so I will have a little bit of time before the appeals meeting, not appeals, I'm sorry, tier 3 meeting, but I don't know how soon I'll get there to be available.
Yeah, I intend to continue following this, this one. The, Friday was the anticipation kind of for the budget, in conference committee. I'm not sure exactly the timeline in terms of, S59, in House government ops, but it would have to come out of that committee on a vote, before it goes back to the body at large as well.
Kristen?
I would just say I would wholeheartedly support, staff and a board member being present as long as that's not seen by the committee as being overly pushy or intrusive. And I would be, I don't want to put you on the spot, Brooke, but maybe you would welcome that opportunity, call it that, to be present at the State House, because I just think this is also critical as it's getting near the finish line. And I would be happy to help too. Brooke's been has testified in committee this year.
My
great.
only issue is I am not going to be available on Friday. I could come up tomorrow. That wouldn't be any
Thursday.
problem. But yeah, I'm headed to graduation weekend at the crack of dawn tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's right. Let me just look at the committee agenda for
Yeah, and I can review Janet and see where things are and then reach out to board members who've expressed interest and see if there's an opportunity for us to participate actively in that these final days.
I have some availability Friday, Janet, if you need me.
They don't even have anything on here for Thursday or Friday unless, do I need to? For House GovOps, there's
Yeah,
there's
they've got it on Thursday at 9:30. Currently.
all I see on their agenda is Wednesday,
yeah.
Tuesday. And then the other, where's the budget right now? In Senate?
Budget is in conference committee.
Oh, okay, so, yeah. So that one is, that's the real imperative, is the budget and making sure that we, have those two positions. We can continue to muddle our way around in the open meeting law space. But
Janet, I help testify on that too. I'm more than willing on Friday if that's a priority. I can rearrange and be down.
okay. All right, so Pete, let's let you reach out to board members that have the wherewithal to be there and testify. After
Excellent.
checking.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, let me go back to the agenda. Any questions from anybody, public included, on our updates and our legislative involvements? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to G, discussion and possible action on appeals enforcement and attorney-client memoranda.
Right, so this is an executive session item, so I can make that motion. So I'll move that the board enter executive session to discuss pending and probable Act 250 appeals and enforcement actions and to have confidential attorney-client communication on these matters, with the understanding that premature public knowledge of these matters would place the board at a substantial disadvantage. Specifically, the three items that we intend to discuss in executive session are two appeals with the environmental court, docket number 23-ENV -00021, docket number 23-ENV-0043, and enforcement case 2024_040.
Thank you, Alex. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Brooke. Any discussion? Okay, hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I,
That was unanimous. So we will enter executive session to discuss these cases, and we will return after executive session before adjourning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, where's Brooke? She here?
It doesn't appear that she's here yet.
He might be back in the other meeting. Oh,
There
here
she
she
is.
is.
There she is. Okay, Maddie, are we recording?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we are back from executive session. Brooke has a motion.
Yes, I would move to authorize enforcement to transmit a proposed assurance of discontinuance with directive in docket number 2024_040, with the directive to number 1, obtain an after the fact amendment to land use permit series 1R0980. And number 2, to pay a $3,000 civil penalty along with a $603.96 to recoup Land Use Review Board its enforcement costs.
And I'll second.
Was Sarah seconding? Okay, any discussion on that motion? Seeing, hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
That was 5 ayes, unanimous. And I believe Alex has a motion.
I move that we reauthorize the consent to issue an administrative order in docket number 23-ENV-00043.
Okay,
And I'll second.
thank you, Sarah. Any discussion on that one? Seeing and hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Sarah, I didn't get your vote.
Sorry, aye.
My Siri was talking to me. That was unanimous. She wanted a vote, but anyway, she doesn't get one. That was 5 Land Use Review Board members saying aye for that motion. Thank you, everybody. We have nothing left on the agenda but to adjourn. But let me just ask one last time if there is any public comment. Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Alex.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sarah. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I again didn't hear somebody, but I thought that was, raise your hand again, everybody. That's 5 ayes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
See you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.